Good evening, good evening, good evening. We live out here tonight in the Spotlight Live podcast with your host, Mike Melton. We got a special guest tonight, my good friend, Billy Consul from Harlem, New York. What's up, Billy? How you doing today, man?
What's going on, my brother? Good to be here, man. Hope all is well.
Yes, it is, brother. I'm glad to have you on here, man, and take a trip down memory lane. I had the courtesy of having you at my events years ago, and I looked at your history, man, and you did a lot of great things for a lot of kids, man, and want to make sure we get your story out here, man. How everything going with you tonight?
Everything is good, man. Just blessed to be here, man, and just pushing forward, man. That's it.
All right, brother. As we do it in the Spotlight Live, podcast, we always like to pay tribute to somebody that was in the basketball community that's no longer with us and dedicate that particular show to them. So tonight, this show is dedicated to Jamani JoJo Wright, born March 21st, 2005, and passed away January 27th, 2021. JoJo starred in basketball spotlight tournaments with Riverside Hawks. The Southpaw played with the heart of a lion and scored buckets with the best of them. He went on to become a sophomore star at Uniondale High School in Long Island before tragically losing his life. He will always be remembered for his beautiful smile and competitive nature. He was definitely one of my favorites to come through B-ball spotlight, man. When that happened, Billy, man, when the young boy, when I got that news, that hit me hard because the young boy used to be at the tournaments, man, and he just had that smile and he just played so hard, no matter who he was playing against, man. And when I got that call and about it, and I saw the news thing, it was like, nah, man, this can't be right. I ain't like the feeling in anything, man. And right now, I go to church with one of his family members, his uncle, I think, and I missed the young boy because he just had that it thing, man. And he tragically lost his life, man.
Right. Mike, we can share this, right? You shared it?
Yeah, I tried to, but I can't do it. If you go on my page, maybe you could. I couldn't do it from my end.
Okay.
I was trying to put it on yours, but I don't know how to do it from my end.
Okay, it's all good.
Hold up. Let me see something. All right, hold up. I think I got it.
Okay.
I think it's on yours now.
Okay, let me try it here. Nah, I can't. Nah, I don't think it's. Okay. Yep, I think it's on. I think it's there. Yep.
All right, Billy, man, here we go, brother, man. I definitely couldn't wait to get this interview done. Did the necessary recon on everything. So let's get at it, man.
Let's do it.
Harlem, New York, man. Growing up in the house with 6 sisters and a mom, bro. That's a lot of estrogen in the crib, man. Tell me how was that growing up, brother?
So growing up, we quite didn't get to the 6 at that age. Growing up, I think it was just 3 of us. It was 4 of us at the time, and the other 2 came on later on. But it was one of magical moments, right? You know what I mean? Like I would always sit there and say, like, those was probably the best years of my life, right? Not even realizing that whatever situation we were going through as a family, man, we figured out how to do it together. And I was blessed to have, a beautiful mom to, have it by the helm. And, even though she, go through the things that she was going through, it was very impactful, man, for her to be there in our life, man. So I'm grateful for that. And then again, it was like, the building I grew up in was my family's building, right? My grandmother lived on the 3rd floor. My great grandmother lived on the 5th floor. My grandmother had four daughters, right? So my mom was the oldest, so all of them lived in the building, right? So it was just like that was our building. So, I grew up in a special time.
Yeah. And I saw that you had though he wasn't in the same house as you, still had a special bond with your father, man.
Yeah. My father played a pivotal
relationship.
My dad played a pivotal part of my life and my siblings' life, right? Even though he wasn't in the household, he was one of our main, fixtures in our life, right? I didn't grow up not a day without my dad being around, right? No matter what he had going on, he always stayed present. And the funny thing is, my dad lived in the same block that I grew up in, right? So it was like every day, like I would go from my house across the street to my dad's house, right? He was someone that was always present, what I mean? So I was thankful that I had both of my parents. Yep.
Now let's get into when you jumped on the hoop scene. Talk about the hoop scene for you as a youngster, man.
The hoop scene growing up in Harlem was like, was the mecca of basketball, right? I grew up with the likes of Sham God, Kareem Reed and Adrian Autry, all of those dudes came out of Harlem, right? And those were the guys that I actually played against, right? Because I went to Cardinal Hayes High School, and Adrian and Kareem went to Talent Time at the time. Right. But, again, growing up playing basketball, you meet everybody. And I guess that's where the relationship started with a lot of guys, legendary basketball players coming out of Harlem. We started young.
So you play AAU ball too during that time?
Then, you know what? The funny thing is we didn't really have AAU basketball back then. And basketball wasn't as saturated as it is now with different basketball programs. Right. And, fortunately and unfortunately, I didn't get a chance to play on the top tier teams at the time. At that time, it was just Gauchos and Riverside, that dominated the basketball scene, right? Those other guys who was much better than I, they had the opportunity to play with them. But I played with the Young Bucks. I played with Young Life. So I played with some reputable organizations growing up at the time. But I didn't hit that top tier. Right, I didn't hit that top tier.
I remember Young Life used to have purple and yellow.
Yeah.
They played that. I remember they used to come play at Hamilton Little Lads down by
Little Lads. Yep, you remember Little Lads?
Yep. I remember Young Life. Young Life was something serious. I remember Young Life, bro.
Yeah.
That's why I started smiling when you said that. That's why I started smiling when you said that.
So the funny thing is, Young Life, we were those guys who, we were fly guys, right? We used to change we used to change our uniforms, change our sneakers at halftime. You know what I mean? Like I don't know what was going on at that time, man, but we was just, Gauchos and them was there, but it was just that Young Life just had that energy because, and Little Lad and Small Fry, we came out one time with capes, right? You know what I mean? Warming up with capes, man. So it was an interesting time.
Little Lads is what sparked me to do what I was doing with B-Ball Spotlight, because I played in Little Lads, but I was so intrigued on how all y'all teams was coming down there from all them different places.
Right.
That intrigued me. Like, how was they able to get all these people to come here? The Gauchos and Riverside and Young Life and East Orange and all. I'm like, yo, what is this? That was the first time it sparked my interest. Thing that I saw that you talked about how you reached that point as that teenage thing, and it hit you, and you was like, maybe like NBA aspirations and things like that wasn't in your future. Take me back to that moment when you thought about that.
So growing up, it's just like you're growing up in the 90s, right? In the mix of that crack epidemic and the fast life, fast cars, girls, money, and all of that other stuff. And you growing up in those environments, that's what you see. Right. So some of us, use basketball as our way out, and some of us use basketball as our way in to the circle. Right. Because you playing basketball, like, all the drug dealers and the guys in the community, gives you that little bit of respect. And you kind of like now you in that circle, even though you really don't want to be in the circle. But that was just a part of just like, the atmosphere. So for me, I didn't realize that, I did realize, I don't want to say I didn't realize I wasn't that good. I was good enough to play, you know what I mean, and get a little name for myself as somebody that played basketball, but I wasn't as good as some of the others that played at that time. Like, say the Shams or the Kareem Reed and stuff like that. I didn't play to that magnitude, but I was okay. And then, after a while, I realized, like, I'm like, this thing is not going to take me anywhere. I need to do something else. And at that moment, I didn't realize that moment is when I start thinking about just hanging out in the streets and doing things, to kind of get some of that street cred, right? Somebody who played basketball, like one of those guys who wanted to be in. I played basketball, but still wanted to be in the in crowd with the street guys. So, started that way. And again, that wasn't, my purpose, right? And that's not how I was brought up, but I followed the footsteps. I wanted to follow the footsteps, of like my dad and my brother, who was all in the streets doing the things that they were doing. I glorified that, right? And most kids in our community at that age, we glorified that
100%.
Right. That when we really didn't have that mentorship or that role model, right? So my role model was my dad, right? But guess what my dad was? My dad was a street dude in Harlem, getting some money, right? So that's who I aspired to be, right? I aspired to be that man that he was, and didn't realize that what he was doing was kind of like, bringing a downfall on, not just my community, but family members also.
Wow, indeed. So then you get into it, you doing the thing, and then you came face to face with a near-death experience, man. Take us to that day and explain what happened that day, man.
So it was, it starts from the night, right? So usually, we would leave, Harlem, not leave Harlem, but, as Harlem is square blocks or whatever. So we would leave the block that I would hang out on, and we were walking home. And it started that night where I asked, I was going home and I stopped to see someone. But at the time when I was walking with someone, a couple of friends, and I asked somebody about somebody else, not just kind of trying to figure out who this person was, who I had some altercations with, but I really didn't know who he was. That next morning when I went home, and at this time, you got to remember, we had beepers back then, right? There wasn't cell phones, nothing like that. So someone was beeping me all type of hours, like, yo, come, basically come downstairs. So I come downstairs and call them, but I never went downstairs. So that morning, as I was leaving out, my little sister walked in front of me, and the young man asked him, do you know Billy? And she was like, yeah, he's coming down on the 8th staircase. So as I'm coming down on the 8th staircase, I just saw a shadow, and I'm looking at the shadow as I turned, and only thing I just saw was sparks coming out of a gun. And lo and behold, I wound up getting shot 6 times and, left for dead in the building. My stomach, my back, arm, and leg. Yeah.
Now take us to that moment, if you don't mind. Like, I know you in shock. They taking you to the hospital, and what's going through your mind and what's going through your family mind at the time?
So at the time, it was interesting because when I got hit, I only felt one bullet, right? So it pierced my body and numbed my whole body. So I didn't know how many times I got hit until I actually got to the hospital. And, after I came out of, sedation and all that, after a couple of days where we get to that. But I just remember when I got hit that I was laying on the floor and I was banging on the floor, screaming for my mom, right? I was just screaming for my mom. And then my mom came out of the building and she found me on the floor. And the only thing I can just remember is the blood. Like I had blood coming out of my nose, my ears, my mouth. And I remember laying there and I really couldn't move, but I just remember just laying in a pool of blood, right? That's to this day, that's all I see is that blood. Like my whole face was all in the blood, right? Didn't know exactly what really happened because I didn't see him until, it was too late. Right. So then, we got to the hospital, and for whatever reason, I was sedated, and they did the surgery. But going to the hospital, I was conscious, but the only thing that was going through my mind was like, don't let me be paralyzed. Right. It wasn't even death, right? Because for me, I was looking at being paralyzed as a death sentence.
Wow.
Right. And that was something that I didn't want. At that moment, I remember saying I would rather die than to be paralyzed. Right. So And unfortunately, God wasn't ready for either one of those things to happen to me, right?
Praise the Most High, brother.
Well, yes, absolutely. So I guess that was that moment that we all talk about.
And during that time, did you have that clarity moment that a lot of us go through, or was it later on when it hit you like, that's it, I got to do something else?
You know what? It's interesting that you say that, because I remember laying in the bed after coming through, being conscious now. I remember my grandmother on one side, my father in front of me, and I think my mother was there too. And I can't remember exactly whose voice it was, but and again, at that time, none of my parents was religious like that, right? Not even my grandmother, right? But I remember someone says, if God pulls you out of this, you're going to have to do his work. Not knowing what his work was.
Indeed. I know.
Not knowing what his work was at the time. It was just
I know.
Like, because, again, I went to Catholic school most of my whole life, but still, like, that Catholic religion wasn't really ingrained in me, right? You would go every day, you would pray before you go to school, and then, we would do the mass and all that other stuff. But the religion and the spirit didn't really capture me the way that it did as I got older. But that was one of the issues. That was one of the things that was my aha moment. But it wasn't the complete aha moment. That complete aha moment didn't come till probably about 5 years later.
Wow.
Right. Wow. But during that time, I kind of like was scared, right? Because one, the person who did it was still out there, and Harlem community is so small, right? So they kind of figured out who did it, and it was just like, okay, what's next? You know what I mean? So it was like that, what's next process. And then I, got shipped out away. My parents shipped me away for a couple of years, and then when I came back, that's when we can talk about that, but that's when the aha moment came.
Okay. Now, take me through the recovery process.
I think the recovery process was probably the hardest thing that I have ever had to do in my life, right? Wow. Because I had to learn how to eat, I had to learn how to walk, I had to learn how to talk, I had to learn how to use the bathroom on my own, right? So you got to think about that, and then I'm gonna tell you something that I'm gonna have to pin later, that I'm gonna pin for later, but I worked on all of that stuff, right? But one of the things I never, you noticed that I didn't mention was working on my mental. Right. So, and we can pin that to come back to that conversation. But, that was hard, right? Because my whole body was weak, right? And just like, having a colonic bag, having a bag with me, and I had to use that bathroom, and I had to have somebody change that for me, right? Learning how to walk, and someone telling you, all right, this is how you need to talk, because for a moment I had, the stuff in my, in my mouth. So I couldn't, so my whole mouth jawbone was kind of swollen, right? So I had to learn how to pronounce letters again, right? That was pretty tough for me. Then trying to walk, but then the other piece to it, anything dropped, I was jumping, right? Because remember, in that building, you hear that sound, right? And that sound is right on top of you. It's hollow, and those pre-war historic buildings that we have in Harlem. So those buildings were hollow. So when you heard the bullet, it just like messed up my ears, right? So everything would make me jump. So the rehab process was hard. I was in the hospital. I got shot. It was I got shot in like May 13th. And I came out of the hospital probably like almost August. You know what I mean? Yeah.
Do you remember that moment when you felt like, all right, I could do this?
I remember the moment where I said, not that I can do this, but I need help to do it. You know what I mean? Because it's like when we start talking about what we need, we have all of that stuff in it, right? But I just needed that one person to help me pull that out, that I can sit there and say that I can do it, right? And at that time, when you're looking at, so we take it back 6 months prior. 6 months prior to that, my mom, we had just lost my older sister.
Mm-hmm.
And my sister died after childbirth in the same exact hospital that saved my life. So I always say, that hospital owed my mother, right? So after my sister died in Harlem Hospital, right, in November, you come all the way up into May, I get shot. Now it's time for y'all to save my life for my mother. Right?
Most high.
Yeah. So, I think, I just needed that structure and that help to, come through that piece.
Yeah. So now you make it all the way back. And then what pointed you into the realm of coaching kids?
So that's interesting. So one day, again, and I still didn't get that aha moment, right? So one day I was out with my boys, and my cousin Desi said to me, I said, yo, I want to do something, man. And I want to coach. And he's like, coach what? And I was like, basketball. That's all I know, right? I don't know how to coach football. I don't know soccer. I play basketball, right? And people don't realize just because you play the game, that doesn't mean that you know how to coach, right? That you'll be an effective coach. So that night, he connected me with somebody who at the time was running a program up in Washington Heights. And we connected because we was all out. And he was like, yo, come to the gym tomorrow. So again, a lot of times people put you, test you, like, are you really going to show up, right? Are you a person in the world, right? We were hanging out. He said, be at the gym at 8:30 in the morning. I was there at 8 o'clock. And I was just sitting in the car like, yo, I want to do it. Not really knowing what I was doing. But I think at that moment when I showed up, he was just like, yo, this guy is serious about it. Yeah. Yeah. So that's when I started the coaching journey.
So take us through your journey, like what teams you started with in the beginning. And because I ran into you when you had the New Heights team with Judah and Cole and all of those guys. So give me that rush before that, getting up to that point.
So that rush before that was, I came in and, I'm just going to speed the story up a little bit, became a coach at Children's Aid Society.
Okay.
And at the time at Children's Aid Society, there was an organization that had just started called New Heights. So New Heights was in the Children's Aid Society. Nick Blanchard was the director of Children's Aid Society, right? So I came in there through that journey, then became the Saturday school director who ran the Saturday program. We did tutoring in the morning, and then we did basketball in the afternoon, right? So then from there, they already had one AAU team. So I think it was like a year later, they started another AAU team. And then on that first AAU team was my first AAU program being a part of and coaching. And on that team, Cal Anderson was on that team with us.
Wow.
Yeah. So, we started at New Heights, and then we was at New Heights for a couple of years. And again, we were not that good, right? We were getting beat. We were getting trash. We weren't one of those programs that people were really looking at after. And then after that, we started to win. Because the team was together from like 4th grade to like 6th grade. Right, when we was at New Heights, right? So we started to build that team and build that family, and we wound up leaving New Heights, right? And then we wound up taking our 5th grade team, which I had the 5th grade team, and Abdul Torrance and Dow Washington had the 6th grade team.
Wow.
Right? And they was just like, because we like brothers, and they was just like, all right, Bill, you take the 5th grade team, and I take the 6th grade. We take the 6th grade team. And on my 5th grade team at the time, I had like Sterling Gibbs, I had Mal Davis, and we wound up. No, I apologize and take it back. It was 6th grade and 7th grade. 6th grade and 7th grade, because we wound up going to BCI in Texas. My 6th grade team, we went to BCI in Texas, and Sterling and Miles was on that team with me. Cal was on the 7th grade team. But we wound up going to Long Island Lightning with Shandu and Dana.
My guys,
my brothers over there. Yeah. So we started that process, right? And then between that process, we wound up. Before we left and got to Dana, and then what we did was Abdul took us under protest. I didn't want to go, wound up taking us to Team Rock. Right? Because Abdul was the, you know what I mean? He was, he was the GM of the team. He was like, we're gonna go over to Team Rock. So he negotiated some deals with Team Rock. We got over there and we was like, nah, this is not a fit for us, man. Like it just didn't feel right. Like they was like the culture that we built at New Heights was a family atmosphere. Right? We got to Team Rock, and Team Rock was family now. I'm not gonna say that, but they had their own set of family members, right? And now we coming in there and it became two teams. They had like 2 5th grade teams and 2 6th grade. Yeah. It's like dividing the money. So we kind of felt slighted a little bit. So we wound up like, saying, all right, we're going to leave. Let's go to Dingle. And remember, I'm the street dude. I'm the rebel. I'm like, nah, I don't want to go over there to Lightning because it's going to be Dana thing. And Dana going to take all the credit for it. I ain't going over there. And, I'm not going to Long Island. I don't want to do it. Long story short, we wound up going over to Long Island Lightning, and Dana and Shandu kind of, gave us the autonomy to continue to do our own thing. Then Daniel, then that's when Daniel Dingle jumped on the team, his little brother, and, we started moving from there. Yeah, that's and we was with Lightning. We were with Lightning for probably about 3 years because then we won like back-to-back national.
Yeah, they had a serious run.
Yeah, we had
a serious run. They had a serious.
Yeah. We had a 6th grade, 7th grade, and 8th grade. We won a national championship, and then from there, I was like, you know what, I want to grow, right? I want to be able to expand and do more things because I always had the mindset of continue elevating and growing, right? And I didn't, I always felt that my ceiling was higher than where I was at. So every year I kind of wanted to evolve. So at that point, someone introduced me to the executive director at Kids Bay Boys and Girls Club.
I remember Kids Bay. Yeah.
So at that moment, they had a struggling, basketball, team, and I felt that this may be my opportunity. So at that time, I had just got a job as the freshman basketball coach at All Hallows High School. Right, and during that time, we wound up going 26-1, won the city championship. On that team, I had like Devon Calver. I had Shane Southwell, all of those. Nice. Yeah. So we won a national championship together. So I was at Kibbs Bay, turned that Kibbs Bay program around, and we still didn't really get to the pinnacle of the AAU process, because of that's a city program, and they kind of didn't want to scale at that high. And then I just kept going. Right. And I just kept moving forward and trying to do some other stuff. So I was with Kibbs Bay for about 3 years, left Lightning, the guys went on to, do some wonderful things over there. Yeah.
Then you come over to, I got introduced to you with your young New Heights team that had like Judah and Cole and them.
Yeah.
Y'all came through, man. Y'all started coming to the basketball spotlight, man. And how was that experience coming to playing in the events that I had?
So, I wound up getting Cole and Judah. They were both they were in 4th grade because I wound up leaving Kibbs Bay, and I wound up becoming a director at this program called Fast Break in the city.
I remember Fast Break.
Yeah. I became a director there, and it was just like, I wanted to start this AAU program because they didn't have. It was like a pay-for-play program, right? But they didn't have a major AAU grassroots program. So I said, you know what, this is what I'm going to start. So then I did a tryout, and then wound up Cole and Judah was my base, right? I had those two. They both was probably around like 8, 9 years old. I had those two, and I was talking to his dad, and his dad was like, yo, let's make it, let's do the team based on them. And I was like, okay, cool. You be my assistant coach, and let's just go from there. And then we stayed with Fast Break for like a year and a half, right? And
I remember they came over.
Yeah,
I just remember Mac. I didn't know you like that. I just remember Mac He was more coachable and all that stuff. And he was telling me about this Greg Anthony's son and this my son. I remember Fast Break came over. I didn't remember you with them though.
Yeah. So I was, because I was a director, and then me, I was always not standoffish, but I was always the quiet one, right? I always stayed on the side. And Mac, Mac did all the administrative stuff. He met with all the program directors. He got all the AAU rosters. He did. Matt was he was a team father. That was the coach that did everything for us, right? So I didn't really have to do nothing but just show up, coach, and after that get the kids. And I left. Like, didn't really want to be, because you got to remember, I'm coming out of the streets. I'm now in this basketball circuit, and as you know, as I get older, it becomes the streets all over again at certain points. You know what I mean? So I kind of wanted to kind of go a little different route from that. So we stayed with Fast Break for about those 2 years. And then when we wound up leaving, I was stuck, right? Kamani walked up to me, right? Me and Kamani have always been, rivalries, right? But that's been my brother, like, one of my big brothers in this thing. And he was coaching, I think, Team Next.
I remember that
at the time, right? And then he wound up, was like, yo, I'm going to New Heights. I'm going to be the director. You should come back over. So I went back to the crew, the parents, and I said, listen, I spoke to Kamani. They're going to give us a budget. They're going to give us some money. And, we're going to go back under New Heights. So now at this time, we're in the fifth grade. We're the fifth grade team at New Heights. And we wound up going to the national championship in Detroit, and we lost in the national championship game. And that was the beginning of, how we started with the Little Ballers project.
Yeah. And then when y'all came down, man, it was some good bump to have y'all come down to the spotlight, man.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It was to have that. I just wanted to have something up our way that rivaled what was going on in the DMV.
Yeah. But at the time, it was funny because at that time we started going to what's the joint in Maryland?
Maryland Invitational?
Yeah. We was going to Maryland Invitational first, right? And it was just like, then somebody Matt put me on to B-Ball Spotlight, and I was like, well, let's do it. So then we started to come down to B-Ball Spotlight, and I used to get mad, right? Because they always put us in where we had to wind up playing the Gauchos or Riverside to get to the tip, right? No matter how it came down, we would do well in our bracket, right? Then it was a Jersey team that was what was a Jersey team? It was my guy Reggie and them.
Oh, Izod,
right?
Yeah,
it was
we run,
and we won, right? It was always them, and then the other team that had Sky Blue, I think it was not Team Next, from out in Jersey.
Sky Blue.
They used to wear Sky Blue. Can't remember. I'm gonna come back to them. And I was just like, yo, we always in the same bracket. So every time we came down to B-Ball Spotlight, because we came down like 4 times a year. You had like 4 times a year. So we would come down and we would always meet either Izod or Team Final.
Yeah.
We will always be Team Final in either the championship or the semifinals, and we can never get over that hump, man.
Yeah. So then with that squad, you guys got together. You got together with Crystal and a couple of you guys, and y'all decided to do the Little Ballers project. How did all of that come together?
So one day, Crystal and I, we were talking about footage, and she was just like, Coach, do you have any footage of you coaching? And I was just like, nah. She was like, well, I want to get some footage of you and the boys and the team, and I just want to take footage because I want to have some footage of Cole when he get older. I was like, okay, no problem, let's do it. Not realizing that whole, once AAU season started, like in September, right after Round Ball here in New York, we started going on, circuits every week. So not realizing that there was a camera crew following us all the time.
Wow.
Right. And then, one day she came to me, she was just like, bro, I have probably about 75 to 100 hours worth of good basketball footage. Wow. I need to do something with it. And at the time, Crystal was a filmmaker, right? She had just came off making a film, wrote a book called Dirty Laundry. So that was her thing, right? She did it with Patrick Ewing's ex-wife, Rita Ewing. So I didn't realize that she was coming up with this story. So she came up with this story, and then one day she was like, we're gonna go edit it, come with us to edit it. So we went to edit, and she kind of like sent it back to me probably like a week later of the promo, right? And the promo, which was a sizzle reel of probably about 3 minutes. So she put this whole story together, and it was about Judah, it was Cole, it was Judah. It's about 4 boys that was on that team.
Yeah, Judah, Cole,
Kevin, and Tyreek.
How did y'all pick the kids that y'all wanted to use?
Because like we did interviews with all of the so you create your storyboard, right? After you create your storyboard, you figure out what you're trying to say and what you're trying to convey. And when she did that, it came out to these 4 boys who had the most compelling story, because you're a storyteller. You got to look at the story, right? When you look at the story, who are the ones that's in this group that can tell the most compelling story? So you have the Judah in his story. You had the Cole. You had the Tyreek story. Right, and then you had the Kevin story, and that was the premise of the story. It was like 4 boys who aspire to be in the NBA. So from there, we shopped it to Lupe Fiasco. He was the first one who came on and financially contribute to something. And then one of the other producers, I think it was Tammy Fry, she came in and she brought Amari Stoudemire to the project. But then they went back to Crystal and said, you got to tell you got to give something else. It's good, right? But you got to give something else that makes people want to really tune into it. And at that time, she looked at me and she was just like, I think we should interview you. And we should, because at that time, Chris was one of my closest friends at that time. So she knew all the stuff that, where my life was. And we just sat down over a couple of weeks as we was traveling, because we was on, at that time, we was on, if you notice in Little Ballers, we were on their national circuit. With, AAU, right? We were, so we sat down every night at the hotels and we were just talking. And next thing you know, she sent a 3-minute clip of me talking, and she was like, I'm putting this all in the package, and she put it into the package, and that was like, oh, that's it. And from there, we got a licensing deal with Nickelodeon, and Little Ballers was born. And then a year later, 2 years later, we wound up creating Little Ballers Indiana with Skylar Diggins.
How did you guys get all of those pro players? Were those pre-recorded clips for something else, or they knew they was getting interviewed for you guys' project?
No, they interviewed. They came in and they agreed to do the project.
Y'all had a lot of people on there, bro.
Yeah, we didn't. None of the stuff was pre-recorded for anything else. All of that stuff.
Okay, y'all had a lot of people on there.
Yeah, was our team going directly to those individuals, or those individuals coming to us, and we doing an interview. So none of us, nothing was pre-recorded for anybody else or anything else. That was all our content.
It was one quote that one of the kids said that really touched me. All of their stories were so impactful, and y'all did a good job of picking the kids from different parts of life in New York. It was one of the kids that said something that was profound when he said, "Playing for you helped him get through his family divorce." Yeah. And it was for a kid that young to understand that as a 5th grader, it hit me like, wow. And he said, my mom and dad was going through a divorce, and playing for Coach Billy and playing with this team helped me get through my mom and dad divorce. And it was profound to know a kid 11 years old that had a concept to understand that was going on, man.
Yeah, so and it's interesting that I never, all the kids and any kid that I ever coach, I have always called them my nephew, right? Like I don't call them the name, I just call them nephew, and it's just like to this day, But all of those kids was my kids, right? As you know, as an AAU coach, all the kids at your house, you all at their house, spend the night. And, he was a young man who mom and dad were separating. And, it was tough on him, right? Because, he grew up in a household with his whole family. Right. And at that moment, they were separating. Right. And sometimes we think kids don't feel that. He was one of those individuals who felt that. And we were his family. Right. We were his family. And, he would come to me and, and think about it. He wasn't one of the best players. He didn't play that much.
I know.
Right. But he was at practice every day. If I told the whole team to run, he was running. He was never late. He was always on time. He was usually the first one in the gym, the last one out of the gym. And then also, he came from a fluent background, as you can tell, that he had more than the others, no matter what it was. He had, no matter what it was. So he just was just like one of those guys who just became one of my boys. Like, I would go get him. He had issue in school, or, I'm coming to a school to pick him up, or, he was just one of those kids. Right. And to this day, we still have a great relationship.
That's dope, man. How do you view it when you look at the project now, all these years later? Like, if you turn it on and look at it now, what do you think about it?
I haven't watched it in a while. I think I watched it, and I'm just going to tell you something that's just personal. I watched it one time when I was asking myself, after I lost an election, right, when I was running for office and I lost, and I watched it because I was down and I needed something to pick me up. And I realized like how much I love the game of basketball and how much I love helping young people find a true talent and try to and find a true self. Right. So when I watch it now, I watch it with a different eye. I watch it as an inspiration of how I was to those young men. Right. And then I go to those young men pages and I look at where they are now and what they're doing now and say, you know what, because of me, they are where they are at. Right. Because again, I was an extension of their parents. Right. So you got to realize I had practice every day for 2.5 hours. And then every weekend, as you remember, Mike, every weekend we was away at a tournament. Right. So those were my kids. Right. So I went through the struggles with them in school, the struggles with them at home, the struggles with them on the basketball court, the struggles with them growing up, being young men. So, when I look at it now, I look at it from an objective perspective, like, what, this basketball changed the trajectory of a lot of young men's lives.
Praise the Most High for that, brother. Yes, you did. So then you wrap up the project. Then, as they said on the project, you moved on, and like few people know this because you don't even put it out there like that. But I found out definitely that you were a co-founder of one of the top New York programs right now, the New York Rams. How did all of that come together and you became a co-founder, man?
So what happened was on that team, that New Heights team, Dan Cloris, who is the founder of the Rams with me, he came to me. He said, Bill, I own a name. He said, I want to start my own basketball program. Right. The concept, we came up with the concept, the names, the logos and all of that stuff. And he said, let's put this program together. So you got your 6th grade team. We get a 7th grade team. And this is when at the time, Jesse Shapiro and, we had these teams and we just put those teams together. And out of those teams became the Wrens. I had the 5th and the 6th grade team, and someone had Steve had like this. We brought Steve over at the time. Steve was with the Gauchos. He had like a 4th grade team. So I got so many guys who wanted to leave their prospective programs at the time. And, I had, we had the financial stability to say, you know what, we can take this team, we can take that team. So our first year with the Wrens, we had about 3 really good nationally ranked AAU teams from 5th grade all the way up to 8th grade.
And once you guys put it together, how did that affect the other teams that were in New York at that time?
Well, it affected them a lot, right? Because again, like anything new, we were one of the new programs, right? And and made sure that we put out a great product, right? And we put out some great players. And one of the things that I had to do, like anything else, I went to coaches who I thought could bring some validity to the program, right? Because again, one of the things that we wanted to do at Rens was make a name right out the door, right? I didn't want to grow a name because my name walked into some rooms before I walked in the room, right? So I wanted to lead a program that, that name walked into the room before the teams walk in the room and everybody is looking for them, right? So it was like, I'm going after everybody's neck in New York City. I'm going after Riverside. I'm going after the Gauchos. I'm going after anyone that had a name. It was just like, I want their spot. And we put together, these teams, and because of the relationships that coaches had with players, they were able to get the best players for their teams, right? So when you look at some of the kids that came out of that program now, like Jose Alvarado, those kids were in the program from junior high school.
Yeah. And you guys had, I don't know if all the teams had it, but I know y'all had like a serious board and all type of galas and all type of different entities, streams that was helping y'all on the financial end. Did that make y'all feel like really nobody around here is going to be able to stop us from steamrolling this thing?
Oh, absolutely, man. That was the goal, right? And one thing I will say is Dan is a master of that, right?
I know.
That's something that he.
I know.
That's something that he does, right? So he was able to. Let me just my computer. All right, here we go. So he was able to, get some of his friends to be on the board, buy into what we were trying to do, because we had so many things outside of basketball that we wanted to do, so we had a board and we did our first gala and we raised like almost $1 million or something like that.
Yeah, y'all was on a different level when it came to that type of thing, man.
Yeah, so we had a amazing run. You know what I mean? I think the concept that we came up with. We wanted to offer free health insurance for those kids, in indigent communities who didn't have health care. We wanted to do the tutoring thing, but we also wanted the tutors to go to the kids' house, because again, sometimes kids can't come to tutoring and then come to basketball practice because they're too far out, right? So we just had to come up with this plan. How do we get these kids to be successful on and off the court, right? And doing the tutoring piece, we were able to to do that.
How did it feel when it was time to walk away from that chapter as something that you co-founded?
Again, for me, it's all about legacy, right? So no, like you just said, no one here, people who know, right? But I'm never the type of person to put out what I own or what I did or what I created. I just like the work to speak for itself. But when it was time for me to grow, it's like anything else. You plant a seed, you nurture it, it starts to grow. But then, at that time we started running into, we started clashing like any business do. My goal was, was something different. His was something, different. And then, we brought in certain individuals. Andy Borman came on to be the ED. And then I had gotten another opportunity, because for me, it was always a track, right? I wanted to start an AAU program. I wanted to build the program. I wanted to coach high school basketball. I wanted to become an athletic director. Then I wanted to become a college coach. So that was the trajectory that I wanted to do. So at that time, when I was with the Rens, a year later, I got offered the job as assistant athletic director for Bishop Loughlin High School in Brooklyn. So I wound up taking that. I wound up taking that when it was time for me to go with the Rens. I started that following year as the athletic director of Bishop Loughlin High School.
During that time, like you said, you had got cold when y'all was with Fast Break. Now with time with the Rens, he's blossoming into this player. When did you know that it was something special there?
I always knew it was something special. So I'm careful with that word when I say special when we talk about our young men, because I think all of our men, our young men and young boys are special in their own
Well,
right.
let me rephrase it: a special basketball talent.
I knew he was a special basketball talent in 5th grade, right? And the reason why I knew he was a special basketball talent is because he had something that a lot of young people didn't really had. He had the heart, like he had like he was just tough. And people don't realize he wasn't the best player on that 5th grade team, right? But he brought something to that team that I think made him who he is today, right? He's a tough, solid kid, and he was just mentally and physically tough. He didn't care who he was playing. You know, I always joke, he was a privileged kid who grew up tough.
Right? That's what I said when I saw him.
Yeah,
like he just had a streak. It was something different.
Yeah,
he just had a streak.
Yeah.
So you have him there, coaching a kid with that kind of pedigree, father, high school, college, NBA player. You know what I mean? How is it coaching a kid that had that kind of pedigree?
For me, it was just coaching your son. He's like a son to me, right? So it was just like I got on his behind just like I got on my son behind. I suspended him in the national championship game because he had a bad attitude on the court, right? So, you know, for me, I don't look at the pedigree. I look at the who they are as a person and who they can be when they get older, right? So again, I always tell my players, use basketball as a vessel to get your education, right? That's the first model that we have to take. And you know, when you talk about being special on the basketball court, yeah, he was special, but at times when people don't realize, it looked like it was effortless for Cole, right? Because at one point, Cole wasn't someone who stayed in the gym all the time and worked on his game. You know, when he got to 8th grade, I looked at him like, where did I come from? And remember, I'm with the kid. I was one of his, you know, in the circle with, you know, we had coaches that he was doing his training with. You know, he didn't develop to me, right? You know, other people could say something different, but he didn't really develop until 8th grade for me. Like 6th grade, he was good. 7th grade, when he was with, you know, Steve, he was good. But then when he got to 8th grade, he started with Hector. He started to develop a little bit more. And, you know, that's when, you know, he walked into his shoes, right? Yeah, I would say that.
So you with him through all of this time, and high school, North Carolina, then it's the drive. And take us to that night when he got drafted and the moment and how you was feeling, and it's here now. Take us to that day.
You know, so we're going to go back a little bit before we get to the draft.
Okay. Because
the draft for me wasn't as important as it was when we made the announcement that he was going to North Carolina on ESPN.
Oh, take us there then. Take us there.
Right. So, you know, the crew, get in the car, his mom's, me, my son, Judah, Joe, Toussaint, you know, because that's our nucleus as our kids. Those are our nucleus. So we in the car, we driving to ESPN, and we all kind of knew we knew where he was going, right? But it was excitement for them to get up at ESPN, and you know, we met Jalen Rose was there with us.
I saw that picture.
Yeah. So we were all on a set, and it was just like, yo, you ready? Like, you guys, and looking at them like, wait, you guys started together at 6 or 7 years old, and now you guys are here. Now you like the number. He was the number one. I think, if I'm not mistaken, he's like in his class the number one high school recruit, right? Number one and number two. Oh, let me just say top 5, right? I can't remember, but he was there, and it was just like when I'm on set and I'm watching him, and you know, because him and my son have this clothing line. So if you look on it, he basically said where he was going because he was the only one with the sweatshirt that was white and sky blue. So we knew what it was, but when he put the hat on and he said he was going to North Carolina, And then at the time, we got a call from coach at NC, and it was like, yo, I'm happy to hear on the line. So it was just great. It was that moment because it was just like, you finally here. So doing that process, a year later, it was a draft, right? And you got to remember, he got hurt.
I remember at North Carolina.
Yeah, he got hurt in North Carolina. And then, he got back just before the before the tournament. And, his draft numbers started to drop a little bit, right? Because they had high expectations when he first went to North Carolina, like he was going to go top 10, maybe top 5. And then when he got hurt, he dropped. So we're sitting at the house, and because of COVID, they didn't really have a draft.
I remember that.
Yeah. So we would I think we did. I think that year they did have a draft, but I think the top 10 was only invited to the green room.
I remember seeing you guys on video at a house.
Yeah, no, we was at the house, but I'm trying to remember why didn't we go to the draft? And I think that's when we had everybody was at the house. I think
I saw that on video.
Everybody was there, right? So we sitting there, and we got the call from Jeff Swartz, who was agent at Excel, and was like, we think he's gonna go next to Orlando. So we sitting there like on our edge at the table, and then when Commissioner walked in, and he was just like, at the 15th pick, if I'm not mistaken, Orlando Magic choose Cole Anthony. We just went crazy, right? You know what I mean? Because that feeling, watching your kids, like I had that feeling with Cal, right? But Cal was a little bit different. We can go back to Cal in a minute, but to see, like, that was my son, right? That's my son, right? To see him living out his dream was probably the most, like, someone who's not my son, my biological son, but that was probably one of the most proudest moments of my life, to see him, get drafted to Orlando Magic.
Wow, brother. Now, during all of this time, you got your own son, and I saw when he was talking about you was coaching these kids, and you wasn't at his game, but he said he understood. Take me back to the conversation or series of talks y'all had that helped him understand that. Because that was very, very mature when I saw him say that on the documentary, man.
To be honest with you, and it's a full transparent moment, those years was tough for me and him, right? Just as a father and a son, right? Because I didn't know how to be his father. I only knew how to be a coach, and I only knew how to push him on the basketball court. I didn't understand how to push him as being a young man, right? Through those years. And I'll be honest with you, it was probably one of the toughest moments for me as a father, because it's like I'm trying to be a coach, but I noticed that I was a coach and father figure to other players, but I wasn't a father figure to my son. I was just his, a coach or someone that, ran a program that he was in, right? So, we used to have these talks, and you got to remember my team and his team, like he was never on Cole's team.
I know.
He only played once, but because Cole was with me so much, their relationship and Judah relationship, they became brothers. So it was real tough, right? And we used to have those conversations. And when in an interesting thing, I never seen his interview until the day the movie came out.
Wow.
And I remember the day like it was yesterday. At the time we were at a baby shower for my, at my baby shower for my daughter. And I remember Crystal and one of our directors taking him out to have a conversation with him.
I like that.
I never heard the interview, Mike, until we did the screening. I didn't know what he said, right? But I think he knew how much I loved him and wanted the best for him, and he knew how much I loved my team and my boys on that team. So they all came up as brothers, right? You got to think about it. I would have 11 kids, in my house, or Crystal will have 11 kids in her house, and they are brothers, right? So they used to have those conversations, like, we know Coach Billy loves you, Bryce, because that's all he talks about. Y'all need to work as hard as my son. Y'all need to be fast as my son. So he kind of knew that, but for him to say what he said, Mike, I don't even know where that came from, because him and I never had that conversation.
It was maturity, and it was like, I took it as he knew you loved him that much to allow you to go love them too.
Yeah.
You get what I'm saying?
Yeah.
That's a mature thing. Yeah. So then you move on from the coaching thing, and talk to me about the Counsel Him Foundation.
So the Counsel Him Foundation was started from Roland Martin. Right? So if you notice on Roland Martin's part in the film, he talked about so many jobs that's outside of sports and entertainment that doesn't have anything to do with being the main person on the court or in the arena. So through there, it was just like, how can I continue to change the narrative and trajectory of my young men? Right? Let's develop this mentoring program, but you have the same mentoring programs. And I said, you know what, let's do something a little bit different. Right? All the relationships that I have with businessmen and, sports agents and sports execs, let me put something together to help our young men, because I always say, stay in your lane. Right. So you stay in your lane, and, Counsel Him was born based on trying to have a mentoring program for young men who aspire to be more than just athletes.
How did you hook up and link with the NBA Players Association?
So the NBA Players Association, again, is all about relationships. I think anything that we do in life is about developing relationships and being a good person, right? So Dan Gladstone and the team over at the NBA Players Association, I had great relationships with, because I was also a coach for the NBA Players Association when they do their camps, right? So I already had the infrastructure of the NBA Players Association. And one of my good friends, who is Krista Chin, she's the vice president over at the Players Union. I said to her, I want to do this conversation where I have some execs and I have some ball players come and do these sit down conversations about jobs inside of sports that doesn't allow you that you're not the main focus as a player. Right. So whether it was exec, so we had an exec, we had somebody from Nike brand, we had one of the lawyers, we had the vice president of the Players Association at the time, we had an NBA general manager, and then we also had a financier that went to Harvard, who played basketball, but now is probably one of the wealthiest Black men, that I know, that we all know. So that's how we kind of got started with the Counsel Him Foundation.
So you guys are really serious about the mental health aspect, and how do you think it impacts, the lack of mental health has impacted the society, and especially the African American men?
So I think one of the things that impacted us is what society say men should look like, and how men should, voice their feelings, right? And one of the things that we have to start doing is have to start being vulnerable and being able to have these open dialogues about the way we feel and what's going on inside of us, right? So when you look at society teaches us that men, you're supposed to be strong, men don't cry. It's like, for example, I'll give you a prime example, as a dad, when I would take my son to the doctor, right, and he's about to get a needle, yo, be strong, don't cry, don't cry. As soon as you get that needle, don't cry. And he's holding his face real tight so he won't cry. But when I had my daughter, right, with my daughters, Daddy got you. It's okay, you can cry, but Daddy's here. I'm gonna beat the doctor up for you for bothering you. So there is two different, masculine pieces there that we need to address, right? And that stays with our young men for the rest of their lives, right? Wow. And now it makes them hold back their feelings.
Indeed.
Right. Indeed. And now it's just like, I can't talk about my feelings. Right. So now our mental health starts to weigh down on us now, because it's like, how do we express how we really feeling? Right. So then we get into relationships with women, and like, you know, they are taught that men are supposed to be strong, not supposed to soft and crying. So now when you're in a relationship with someone, you got to kind of put this mask on that you have it all together. And it's like, okay, what do I do now? I can't really say something to my woman because she may, make me feel a certain way. But how am I going to release how I'm really feeling?
Indeed. And that's why, like, in my journey, when I first came out about me being in recovery for alcohol and my alcoholism, I had some people that was like, bro, you breaking your anonymity, you bugging out. And I'm like, God did not allow me to be sober. He did not get me sober for me to keep this to myself. I got to tell people, especially people from my community, that what he did for me, so they know that he could do it for them.
Right.
So, and I'm not worried about all that other stuff, whatever job I might not get or whatever this or whatever that. He's going to take care of me because I'm living for him now. So those other guys out there have to see that, bro, Mike don't drink no more. God got him through that. Those 12 steps got him through that. He's vulnerable about stuff that he did when he was drinking. He talks about that stuff. You know what I'm saying? So that other person that's out there dealing with it could say, you know what? I'm going through that. But he's showing me I could get past that. You get what I'm saying? So I'm willing to be the sacrificial lamb for whatever happens, as long as I could get one person to say, you know what, bro, I stopped because I heard your story, man. Yeah. And that's when the vulnerability of not being scared to take that hit for the others, whatever that hit is. You get what I'm saying?
Yeah.
But it don't matter. I got to do that so they can know they got a shot, man.
Yeah. Yeah. You know, one of the things that, I always talk about is broken boys become broken men. Right. So, growing up as a broken boy, right, you come into manhood and don't fix that broken piece of you. Right. So we got so many men, all of us are broken. Right. But what we're trying to do, and it's even with the coaching aspect of it, you got broken coaches. Right. We're trying to teach our broken boys this game of basketball and this game of life, and it becomes a cycle because nobody has healed or dealt with that trauma, because in our community it's not right. It's a stigma to go to therapy as Black men. Right.
Indeed. And I've been in therapy since 2009 after I went through my tragedy. You know what I'm saying? I've been in therapy, and I still do therapy once every 2 weeks, sometimes once a week if I really need it. You know what I'm saying? I do therapy, and I go to my AA meetings daily. So I'm constantly trying to get further help to keep me stable from the things that I dealt with. Now, in this, the councilman, is that the program that y'all provide counseling, or is that the Sunday dinner?
No, so that's going to be Sunday dinner. Yeah.
Okay, let's talk about Sunday dinner now, man.
So Sunday dinner is a speak space for men to have open dialogue about issues that's plaguing them in their community and their families. But we do it over dinner, right? We have this, this bread, we break bread over dinner, because I always think, growing up, Sunday was a dinner where the family got together, had these vulnerable conversations. We talked, we laughed, we did all the things that we needed to do as a family. And I think bringing men together to have these open dialogue and conversations where we can be vulnerable and we can support one another. But the caveat to that is, a lot of times when we have these round tables or these circles, we constantly telling people what they should do, right? Instead of saying, here's what I'm going to do for you as a resource. So when you leave here, you have something tangible that you can say, okay, next week, or in 2 weeks, I'm going to have this therapy session that's going to be free, right? So we'll give you a bunch of therapy sessions that are free, right? So you can start opening up and ready to engage. And then from there, what we hoping that you take all of that stuff and say, you know what, I need to continue my therapy. Right. Because I think, and I'm a big advocate for not just our young boys, but for our young men. Right. And it's like, council Sunday dinner is not just for Black men. right? It's all men, because in a society we start separating us by gender, by nationality, but we all have those same issues, right? But the other key to it is now you pooling resources, right? So now you come into somebody and having dinner at a table with somebody, and somebody saying, hey, listen, I can't find a job, right? It's been hard for me to find a job. These are some of the things that I've been trying to do. And you may have that CEO of a company who wants to who's going through the same thing, right? Because people think people with money don't have the same issues of people without money, right?
Yeah.
Have the same issues, right? So I may be doing child support for $500 a month. I'm just using an example, but that CEO may be doing child support for $39,000 a month, right? And not realizing that that's affecting him also and affecting his kids, right? So we're in this universe cycle of, helping men, right? And that's what Sunday dinner is mainly about, making sure that our men get the same resources and have the same outlet as our females.
I think I'm gonna add a little something to you, and then we'll go on to the next thing. One of the things that you might want to add to it, if you don't already have it, like when I do recovery, when I go talk to somebody about, say, like if you was to call me and say, I got a brother that I think might have a drinking problem, Mike, can you talk to him?
Right.
When I go talk to him, I share him my story first. So then he understands I'm like him. You get what I'm saying? So now if he can relate, then he's gonna be more viable to say, you know what, I could go get some help. Now, if I just jump in there and start telling him what he should do, he's gonna shut down. You know what I'm saying? So I tell him what I did and what I went through. And now he like, oh, this dude like me.
Right.
So that's what could be a more tie-in when you're sitting down at that table.
Okay.
You get what I'm saying? Somebody else that's going through something, somebody tied them in by saying it, what they did when they went through it. Now that person will be like, all right, he could like, all right, he gets it. Now they're gonna be more into wanting to listen to what you gotta say and follow what you're doing because they can relate to you.
Yes, sir. Yeah.
You get what I'm saying? That's another way to tie in what
I appreciate that. Yeah.
You know what I mean? Yep. So now with the Sunday dinner, I saw also that you went so hard for it that you went for counsel and you still trying to pursue that kind of role. Why do you think that you'll be good at that kind of role, and what do you think is needed in your community?
Well, I decided to run for city council in the height of the pandemic, right? I have always been politically conscious and always, trying to provide resources for people in my community and people that, I see need the help. And someone just said, Bill, like, it's time for us to start bringing some new blood into the political area, right? And speaking to our young people who, you have a direct contact with, right? To get them involved in the voting process, to get them involved in understanding, why it's important to vote in your local elections, right? And have someone there speaking for you who've been through where you've been through and who understands, the needs of the community, right? So I decided to jump into political space and then, continue to grow and continue to learn more on how effective change can make, how change can be effectively made in our communities, right? Because so much often we don't vote in our local elections because we don't see the importance of it, and not realizing that the local election are the ones that affect you and affect your community, right? So, for me, it's not even about me being great for it. It's for me about being great to give the message and show as an example why we need leadership that look like us, right? So when you look at a lot of politicians, we probably would see them old, we would probably see them white, we would probably see them in seats forever, right? But now when you get someone that looks like you, talk like you, act like you, is from where you from, but also have the ability to lead you and lead your community, those were the things that I aspire to do.
Indeed, brother. So now we at the part of the show where we do the 5 cards. This one I bring up 5 pictures and some things that you went on in your life and things of that nature, and just to get your response on each one that comes up.
Okay.
So let's start it off. Here's the first.
Okay.
Talk about this bunch.
That right there, that was the game before we went to the national. That was the semifinal game in Detroit. Yeah, that was a semifinal game in Detroit. Yep. Yep.
All right, next. Let's talk about this relationship.
Oh man, that's a special relationship to me. That's Coach Mack. You know, that's my brother. That's my friend. Let me call him Dr. Mack because he just got his doctorate. You know, he was one of the forces behind any of those teams that I coach. You know, he was always my sidekick, and he was always the voice of reason. I was always the crazy nutted one, and he was always the one that's like, all right, I got it. You know, calm down. I'll take care of it. Right. So that, you know, that's a special relationship for me.
All right. Talk to me about this. Friends.
The Wrens, right? That was a young man who was in Little Ballers who talked about his parents going through the divorce. And if you see the other white guy in the picture below, that is his brother.
Wow.
Right. Wow. That's his brother. And that picture we took in Virginia Beach at Boo Williams. Yeah.
All right. I saw this. It was funny. This next one, I was gonna send it, and then I saw it on your thing. I said he might have took this from me, but I want to get your thoughts on this one though.
Oh, yeah. I posted that a long time ago when I was having a conversation with our youth, right? Because these are all the things that our black men go through, our young black boys go through. If you look at it, it's peer pressure, it's the gangs, it's guns in our community, it's the women, right? It's the basketball, right? It's like you got to get a high school diploma in order for you to play basketball. Then we have the weed, right? Because it became a gateway drug for our young folks, right? And then it's just like, yo, I got to be on the streets. I got to make some money, right? So this is the thing that's going on in our black men's head, our young boys' head. And it's just like, do you realize that this is all the things that they have to deal with? And then we put things that's not on this picture about, you know, maybe not having a stable home, right? May not be having a mentor, may not be able to sleep at night because he's homeless, right? Or in a shelter. So some of those things is not being said, right? But I wanted people to look and say, you know what? This is what black boys go through. So when we kind of like, yo, these young dudes may need to do this, they need to do that. Like, come on, man. This is like, you think about it. You got all of this stuff pointed in your head, and you telling us that they don't need therapy, or they don't need to talk to somebody, or they don't need an outlet. Bro. Nah, we can't do that. So we got to figure out a way to change the narrative on what it looks like to be a black man, a black boy. Yeah.
All right, last one.
Yo, my 3 sons. That's all I can say. You know, I love those. I love those boys to death. Right? Those are my 3 boys. Right? You know, those like my sons. Like, we have conversations, we talk. You know, and it's outside of basketball. Right? You know, I hang out with them. Right? I'm the old dude in the club. Like, I'm going with y'all. Right? Because if it don't look right, we ain't doing it. Right? I fly out to Orlando. I fly with them to the games, and nah, we ain't doing that. Nah, come on, we leaving.
I love it.
So those, you know, I can't say my son without saying my 3 sons.
Wow, brother, I love it, man. I love it, man. You know what I mean? So in closing, how do you want Billy Council to be remembered?
I want Billy Council to be remembered as someone who left it all out there for our young people. right? Some people do things for accolades, and some people do things for financial gain, and some people just do things for clout. I do it for the love of my young people and the love for my community. And I think, they say service is a price that we have to pay to live on this earth, right? So God gave me another opportunity, so I have to provide those services, and that's how I'm paying my debt back to Him by being a vessel for our young people.
I just want to say, like I often tell my kids, that we all got a story. You know what I mean? And on that day when you went down that steps, that was a vital part, a huge part of your story. And I always tell them, you're gonna take your story and you're either gonna use it for a testimony to help others, or you're gonna use it as an excuse to destroy yourself. You know what I mean? And you took your story as a testimony to help others, and you use that inspiration to change lives, man. I started this podcast because I had a guy that coached in my little league after I left that died. And when I saw his picture on Facebook, I just thought about when everybody was saying how great he was. I never heard him tell his story.
Right.
I never knew why he was doing what he was doing. So I said, I've been around a lot of guys that sacrifice their family time, sacrifice cars, all that kind of stuff to do what they doing. And a lot of people don't even give them their flowers while they're here.
Yeah.
You get what I'm saying? So I want to give you guys your flowers, and I want to tell you, bro, you're a legend. You change lives, man.
I appreciate that, bro.
You get what I'm saying? You change lives, bro. And I want to say that, man. And I want you to continue working, doing what you're doing, man, and continue being a good dude, brother.
I appreciate that, Mike. And I just want to, say thank you for giving us the outlet, right, of B-ball spotlight, man, to, for young coaches like myself and young players like myself to be able to play on a stage that you provided for us, right? Whether it was the event in AC, or in Neptune, New Jersey. You always gave us a platform for our young kids to show their talent, man. And I thank you for creating that, man. And and I also thank you for giving me the flowers, if that's what it is, man. But
indeed, brother, indeed.
I appreciate it, man. And and I'm humble that you asked me to come on here and talk a little bit about my journey, man. And I thank you so much, man. Appreciate it.
All right, good brother. I'll talk to you later, man.
All right. Thank you, bro.
All right, no doubt. Great interview with Billy, man. And we're gonna have some clips coming up very soon, probably starting tomorrow. I want to thank you guys for tuning in to In the Spotlight podcast. Tune in next week as we bring on another guest, and may you guys have a blessed rest of the night and be safe out there. Shalom.